Yes, thank you all. Thanks for having me here. It's super exciting to be here and to have this opportunity to talk to you a bit more about movement data analytics. I know it's been touched on in a couple of talks today already. So let's try to still make it entertaining and something fresh so the lunch slump is not so, it doesn't hit us so hard. As Javier said in the beginning, we've been working really hard over the last couple of months on this extension for trajectory analytics. And I have the chance now to present to you a bit about the background, where it's coming from, and where we might be going, what it can do for you. I don't know about you, but I find movement data fascinating, no matter whether it's movement in a city, like here we have some bike sharing data that we can look at, or vessels moving in the open ocean, or animals being tracked, such as migratory birds. I love looking at the patterns, I love analyzing them, and I love the challenge that it presents. My background personally is in geoinformatics. I've been working in this field for way longer than I care to admit. I develop Python tools that includes plugins for QGIS, such as the time manager that I did in the past. And I develop right now the MovingPandas library, which is based on GeoPandas and many of the other tools I'm sure you're familiar with. So this is where I'm coming from and what I like to do. When we think of movement data, most people immediately go to GPS tracking, but obviously there's many more sources of movement data, and it's also not just limited to vehicles and humans. I already mentioned animals that can be tracked as well. But basically from social media posts over cell phone network data, which we already talked about today, to check-in data and payment, all of these things are movement data in various kinds, with various spatial resolutions, temporal resolutions, and all the limitations that come with this data. So really, there's all the problems you can imagine having with time series data or with geospatial data. You get it all nicely boxed up in movement data because you will have all these kinds of problems. So it can be with coordinates that are kind of all over the place, but probably not even on Earth anymore, to IDs that are not as unique as they are supposed to be, to just a general GPS jittering around and making it hard to detect what you're trying to detect. So yeah, with this kind of data, this is really true. Data preparation and data handling is the majority of the work you're doing. It's not analytics, it's not training fancy AI models, it's data preparation. And I think David hit the nail on the head in 23 when he said that space and time, they really hate each other. These data models, it's not always enjoyable to work with this, even if it's fascinating. So this is where we come back to why we're building these tools to make it a bit less painful. And to be able to build this extension, CARTO has used the MovingPandas library that I've started developing. MovingPandas is already an OSGeo community project, so you might be familiar with this umbrella organization for open source geospatial projects, OSGeo. MovingPandas already has a constantly growing user base, many tens of thousands of downloads. I started developing it late 2018, so it's been a couple of years now. Interestingly, around the same time, a couple of other projects have started that also deal with movement data, so it's in no way a place where there's just one thing. No, there are many things. They have largely complementary functions, so there is not as much overlap as you would think. So I would also encourage you to have a look into those if you're interested in this field in general. MovingPandas covers mostly tools that you need for data exploration, movement data analytics, of course, all the preprocessing for different machine learning engineering tasks. There's also a strong focus on making it visual so that you can debug what's going on, understand the data better. For example, to also build explainable AI solutions. What you can see on the right is a small demo that I built for visualizing how the stop detection algorithm works. So this allows the user to go through different trajectories, apply the stop detection algorithm, play around with the minimum duration and the size of the stop to better understand how the settings influence the outcomes that you get. And this is implemented with MovingPandas and with Panel, and you see how the map and the table at the bottom, they get automatically synced when the user interacts with the app. And yeah, stop detection is definitely the most popular feature that I can tell. So I try to keep track of how people use MovingPandas. It's mostly just possible with scientific publications. I get a kind of notifier if someone cites it. So I try to keep track. It's a bit harder for the industry people, of course, but stop detection is almost always on the list of what people cite MovingPandas for. In this example, it's for human mobility analytics. So of course it is useful to know if you have a group of people, like where do they stop, then you can start to think of what might they have been doing there, how long do they stay, and where do they go afterwards. So this is kind of a typical use case that I see when people outside of my own research group use this library. Other things that people tend to do is pre-processing the trajectories. For example, in this case, they used a functionality from MovingPandas to split the continuous observations of ship tracks into individual trips, and then they learned a machine learning library on top of the resulting data to predict the vessel arrival times. So here they would be using tools to detect individual trips, to split the continuous observation, which might be many weeks, months, or even years, and to split this into chunks of meaningful trips. By metrics such as either stops or certain time intervals or certain gaps in the observation. That would be typically what people are doing. And the third example that I wanted to share from the research community is a whole framework that is built on top of MovingPandas for analyzing drone movement. And they really went all in, so they have used all the tools that are in the box, the splitting, the stop detection that I already mentioned, but also tools to generalize the trajectories, to basically reduce the dataset size, or to smooth the trajectories if you have a lot of jitter, for example, from the GPS, as well as aggregation tools that we have to summarize the datasets. So from these examples that are from research groups that I don't directly interact with, I think we can see that MovingPandas has already been very friendly to developers and generally to people who know how to code. But the next challenge, of course, was to make it more accessible to people who don't know how to use code, to make it more user-friendly. So the first step that I could take alone was to integrate into desktop GIS. And I did this by writing a plugin for QGIS because that's what I know how to do. And I wrote the trajectory tools plugin, which you can already download and try from the QGIS plugin repository. It has not complete feature parity with MovingPandas yet, but it has almost all the features and a couple of extra ones because it also integrates other libraries. For example, for GTFS data handling. GTFS was also mentioned earlier today. So this has been very useful already in the context of our Emeralds project, where we have been collaborating with transport planners, and we tried to jointly develop the analytics for comparing public transport tracks with the scheduled travel times of these public transport routes. And this proved very helpful in enabling them to also tweak the workflows and basically don't have to write code. But obviously, there are limits to how much this can scale. It is limited to your machine and to what you can do with that. Therefore, the next logical step obviously was to get into the cloud. And I'm very happy that this is now possible with this integration with CARTO. This extension can include MovingPandas functionality, but also related libraries such as the MIOS library. And you've already seen a couple of sneak peeks of the analytics tools that are included. Of course, also for trajectory cleaning, for detecting stops, and similar like that. So in the next demo, I will just quickly show you how it looks like right now in this early stage and basically walk you through an example of the analytics that we can do. So starting from the extension packages, we have, of course, the usual workflows, and we start with a point table here. It has the typical fields that you would expect, from the ID to the coordinates and the timestamps. And from there, we take it to the trajectory world, right? We create one trajectory, which is this list of points. And this can then be the input to all kinds of analytics, like the stop detection, which will then output stop points, the start and the end of the stop, and how long it took. We can also add all kinds of metrics, such as calculating the duration or the direction, the movement speeds. And this can be added to the individual points so that eventually you can visualize them on the map. And I've just created a small example here. I think these are taxi trajectories. The one which was like over the half of Portugal, that must have been the trip of a lifetime for this taxi driver. So we can turn the points into lines, and then we have the speed on these line segments between the points. So we can understand the movement speeds of the moving objects. We can also load in the stops to better understand, okay, where is it slow movement and where did the vehicle actually stop? And here in the end, you can also see, for example, we can visualize the duration of the stop to find the longest ones, if that's particularly interesting for our application, to find out where these stops have been. So in this demo, you saw the integration of the preview in BigQuery. I've been told there's also plans to bring it to Snowflake soon. So I invite you to stay tuned. In the meantime, you can try out already MovingPandas and Tragic tools to try to find out what you might be interested in doing once you have access to this as well. And with that, I'm looking forward to all your questions, either now or later during the day. Thank you very much.